Stephen King published Insomnia back in 1994, and a friend described it to me as the story of an old guy's descent into madness after he can't sleep anymore after the death of his wife. It also apparently has a sneaky tie-in to his Dark Tower series, which is unexpected. Regular contributor Sara Hillis read this one. And Sarah, I need your help because I checked out reviews and comments about this one, Insomnia by Stephen King, and people say it's super weird. It has fairy-like creatures called bald doctors for some reason. It gets into metaphysical themes and gets unexpectedly political. This sounds like nonsense. Like, what even is this book?
Well, okay. It's a book about a guy who has just lost his wife due to brain cancer. He's just about 70, and he's learning what it's like to be an old guy in a town of Derry. Of course, Derry's in other books by Stephen King. And so he ends up like waking up earlier and earlier every day. And he's not sure why. And then all of a sudden he starts seeing like auras around people and things. And in the midst of all this, there's a plot involving a neighbor of his who becomes this rabid, like almost conspiracy theory level anti-abortionist. And it beats up his wife because she signed a petition for the other side kind of thing. And he's not an abusive guy at all, like in general. So this is new for him. So he's figuring out, why is this happening? And he realizes there's these, interdimensional beings who, yes, have some connection to the Dark Tower. And they look like little bald guys, and they look a little like doctors because they kind of wear white uniforms. So he calls them bald doctors, like, because that's his name for them. Like, he has to make up a name for who these weirdos are that he can see, because the auras it's another level of perception that they've sort of, as you find out, they sort of tweaked him so he could start seeing this stuff, so he could go on a quest and stop the bad thing that was going to happen, kind of deal. It's just one of those kind of books. It's really about, there's a bad thing going to happen, we're going to tell you about it, you have to go help stop it, because you just have to, because it's your fate to do so, kind of deal. It's one of those sorts of books. And yeah, it might be weird. I enjoy those kind of books, so like, it was fun. I just found it fun. And I found what I really loved about it, and what I love about most Stephen King, is that there's a real sense of humanity in these books. He meets a woman, well, they've been neighbors, and they end up really falling in love with each other. They both lost their spouses, and they realize they have an affinity for each other, and he realizes he's underestimated her as a woman. He thought she was just this sort of gossip kind of, vacuous kind of woman. She's really intelligent, but she kind of had to put on that mask so other people would sort of let her be in their company almost. If she was too intelligent, they'd kick her out, kind of deal. So it's a really neat story, and most of his stories are that way. I read them for the humanity. I also don't have a problem with the weird stuff, because Stephen King has a way, and if you really read it carefully, he brings you into his world. He just twists it and twists reality until you're in this hall of mirrors, and it's just awesome. Like I love when he does that. He'll bring you right in there, and you'll believe it, while you're reading the book. Like, you're there.
There's not that many people who haven't read a Stephen King book anymore, but a lot of people have only read one or two. How would you describe his style? And I asked that because it was interesting the way you described that he still touches on the humanity, which is not something you would expect from Stephen King, a horror writer.
Yeah, he loved the 50s horror comics, so there's always going to be some element of just ridiculous gore and craziness in the book. Like there's always these huge climactic scenes that are just like, oh, look, he cut off his ear and then he ate it, or weird things like
Which,
that.
like, it's gonna sound messed up, but that's kind of fun,
Yeah. But he also reads a whole lot. He observes a whole lot about life, and his characters, I'd say they've, it's deepened over the years, probably, like anybody's writing process. His characters are very well drawn for the most part, and at least the main ones are. And his style is I would say very relatable prose, I guess, for the most part. Sometimes it gets a little more highfalutin when it has to, when it's describing really crazy stuff or interesting stuff. But it's like people are people. They have real dialogue. They use a lot of curse words, admittedly. Some people have objected to that, but Stephen's like, well, that's how my characters talk. That's what he says. So
Yeah, well, all the pearl clutching aside, I find his writing almost like blue collar. It's unpretentious. He talks like people talk. Like
yeah,
I forget in one book, but there was a passage I really liked where he talked about it was in On Writing, where it's his like personal memoir and kind of an essay on the craft of creative writing, fiction writing.
yeah.
And he describes when he was like back in his peak alcoholic days and how he realized he was an alcoholic. And he describes like an empty beer can in the recycling bin as a dead soldier. And he went to go add one more to the bin. I'm like, who calls a empty beer can a dead soldier?
Well,
I love that stuff.
it's a cliche, but that's okay.
It's a cliche. I love
It's
it.
a cliche,
I was like,
but
that's how people talk. I love it.
yeah, yeah. No, he's great that way. He can actually adopt a person's voice. Like if you take Dolores Claiborne, it's Dolores's discussion with like it's a cassette or a transcript of a cassette that they make when she's making her statement, and it's written in like Yankee dialect, and it's written like you forget that Stephen King wrote this book. It's Dolores Claiborne. Like
That's impressive.
it's great. Like it's really great.
All right, that's Insomnia by Stephen King. Sara Hillis, thanks so much.
You're welcome.